Hello. It's been a while since we have done a good old-fashioned love triangle in this little true crime series, and that is exactly what today is. It's a case that turned deadly and left a 20-year-old girl missing, presumed murdered, with her body never found. Today I'm telling you the story of Sidney and Tammy Moorer and Heather Elvis. It's a tale of obsession, of stalking, of a honey trap, and of a murder. Welcome to the anniversary. Shwa-na-na-na, 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 shwa-na-na-na. 20-year-old Heather Elvis went on a first date with a guy. He dropped her home in the early hours of December the 18th. And she did what any girl would do after a first date. She called her friend and roommate to tell her how it had gone. This is Brianna. She was visiting family, which is why she wasn't home that day. And the date, well, it was Heather's attempt at getting her life together and moving on from her previous relationship, which Brianna, as her girlfriend, of course, knew all about. 2 months before, Heather had broken it off with a man called Sidney Moorer. He was an older, married father of 3 whom she had met and began an affair with at her job. The girls' conversation on the morning of the 18th of December lasted about 10 minutes, and Brianna told her friend to not return Sidney's calls, to go to bed. I think most of us have been there, giving your friend this type of advice, or you've been on the receiving end of it. Don't ring him at 2 a.m, don't go see him at 2 a.m. Nothing good can come of a 2 a.m. link up. Remember why you broke up. If most of us are honest, we can say we also didn't listen. But that was the last time anyone who knew Heather ever heard from her. Our story takes place in South Carolina in Myrtle Beach in 2013. Heather was working as a waitress and she met 38-year-old Sidney, who was a repairman, and he fixed some of the kitchen equipment in the restaurant. She told everyone that Sidney had an open marriage with his wife and them two began a love affair. Friends and co-workers recalled that Heather also discussed the relationship that she was having with Sidney with them. She didn't keep it secret. She told her friends, she told people at work, and he would often go to work when he wasn't on shift to give her coffee, to give her bagels. They were in a relationship. He even considered asking her to work as his kid's nanny, like the au pair, if him and his wife moved to Florida, which was like on the cards. Which, even if you did have an open relationship or open marriage, I don't know how it works, but I don't know if you should move the woman in. Tammy, Sidney's wife, learned about the illicit relationship in October of 2013. She threatened Heather immediately. She called her once over 60 times in one day when Heather was at work. She told her, if you don't stop talking to my husband, I'm gonna come get you, I'm gonna come after you, you're gonna have problems. She tried to get her fired from the restaurant, which is called the Tilted Kilt. She called the restaurant regularly, telling them that the husband would stop working there if Heather continued. And to make her husband remain faithful to her, in order to keep their relationship, she used to handcuff him to the couple's bed every night. She changed his phone to a password that only she knew. She accompanied him everywhere when he went outside the house, and he actually agreed to all of the restrictions to save their marriage. She made him get her name tattooed above his dick. She sent Heather texts and texts and texts, some of which were saying that she's gonna kill her husband, that she's gonna get Heather. And also she sent pictures of herself and Sidney having sex. She sent one where he was going down on her, and it's just really gross. All of this though didn't stop Heather from contacting or being in contact with Sidney when he was able to. At one point he did manage to start texting Heather again, and he told her that his wife didn't object to the affair, it's just that he lied about it. She wanted to know when he was going to get his phone back. He said the relationship was over, and she agreed, but she just wanted Tammy to stop calling her workplace, stop calling her. And one of the messages that she sent to Sidney said, I lost hours today. They sent me home after she kept calling. So this was taking over her life. Of the podcasts and articles that I've read and listened to, it's quite difficult people to understand why Heather was still open to communication or why she was still cool with Sidney. But I feel like if she wanted to get her life back, maybe being on his good side, maybe getting a sympathetic ear from him, she thought he could talk to his wife. But if she's handcuffing a man to a bed and sending pictures of them banging, I don't know how reasonable Tammy is. Anywho, Heather and Sidney did eventually cease all communication, and the couple, Tammy and Sidney, the married couple, took their kids on holiday. They left South Carolina, they drove to Disneyland for a vacation on November the 19th. They returned on December the 11th, and it was during that time, during when they were away, that Heather's friends say that she was getting her life back together. She'd gotten a new job at a beauty parlour, and she was starting just before Christmas, really excited about that. Her and her roommate Brianna started attending church regularly as well. However, she had put on weight. Her co-workers at the Tilted Kilt, the restaurant, noted that her uniforms had gone up in size, she'd gone up in bra sizes, and she was worried that she was in fact pregnant, possibly with Sidney being the father. She did take one pregnancy test and it came back as an error. But on the night of December 17th, she went on her first date with another man, which is where we began our story. His name was Stephen, and he drove her around in his car. They were looking at Christmas lights in the area, and then he took her to a parking lot where she learned to drive stick, and she sent pictures to her best friend and to her dad. He dropped her off at her Carolina Forest apartment at about 1 a.m, 1:15, and he is the last person known to have seen her alive. 20 minutes later, there was a call placed from a phone box, aka a payphone, to Heather's mobile. It lasted 5 minutes, and shortly after, Heather called Brianna. They had that conversation, and it was during this conversation that Heather said that on the phone a little bit earlier, Sidney had rung her and said that he'd left his wife and he wanted to meet her. Brianna calmed her down, she was hysterical, told her not to go running, but to get some sleep. And this is the last time that anybody ever spoke to Heather Elvis again.
Day 20 in the search for missing 20-year-old Heather Elvis. On Saturday, dozens of cars and horse trailers lined the heavily wooded area around Ronald McNair Boulevard, just off Highway 501 in Myrtle Beach. Groups of volunteers continued to help in the search.
Her mobile phone records do show her phone moving about, and from this and some security camera footage, prosecutors believe they're able to piece together her movements that night or what happened that night. Heather's phone called the phone box, Sidney's mobile phone 4 or 5 times. One call connected for about 4 minutes, and it travelled throughout the area. At around 3 a.m. on the morning of December 18th, it was never used again. Police found video evidence as well, CCTV linking Sidney Moorer with Heather's activities in the early hours of the morning. There were security cameras at a Myrtle Beach Walmart that showed at about 12 minutes past 1 that night, he entered the store and he bought cigars and a pregnancy test and he left. And there was footage from a gas station showing Sidney making the calls from the payphone across the street to Heather's cell phone at 1:35. Investigators also reviewed footage from private security cameras along the stretch of road, and they showed a car driving up and down and up and down. And even though it wasn't possible to get the license plate, they analysed it, they enhanced the video, they did all that CSI stuff, and it was determined to be Sidney's. Heather's abandoned car was discovered the following day, and 2 months later, the Moorers were taken into custody, both of them, Tammy and Sidney.
So, I mean, this girl, I can tell you just by, as an outsider looking at the Twitter, which I didn't know existed until all this went down, she's not right. She's not normal. I was 20. I partied with bands constantly. I wasn't that kind of girl.
And they were charged with murder, kidnapping, obstruction of justice because Sidney said he didn't make the phone call, and 2 counts each of indecent exposure because when the police searched their home, they found images and videos that they had taken of each other and themselves of doing sexy stuff in public. There have been 3 trials so far related to this case. The first was a mistrial, but Sidney Moorer was convicted of kidnapping and conspiracy to kidnap Heather Elvis and sentenced to serve 30 years in prison. And Tammy Moorer was found guilty of kidnapping and conspiracy in the disappearance of 20-year-old Heather Elvis. She was sentenced as well to 30 years in prison. In her closing argument, the solicitor, Nancy Livesay, said that this is a story about jealousy and deceit, and I think that wraps it up perfectly. And there you have it, a story that is worthy of a blockbuster film. A 20-year-old girl who has an affair with an older married man, the bunny boiler stuff that happened in between, and her potentially being pregnant, going missing and never being heard from again. To this day, Heather Elvis's body hasn't been found, but Tammy and Sidney Moorer are in prison. They have been in prison since last year for her kidnapping. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what you think in the comments, and as always, the links to my research, podcasts, documentaries, all that sort of stuff is in the bio. Have a good one. I'll see you next week. Merry Christmas.